Hello, this is Peter Bates for Insider Travel Report. Thank you very much for joining us. I've got two terrific speakers with me today to talk about London. We've just had an amazing virtuoso event in London, and so this is an opportunity to reflect about the city, about the country, and about some of the important factors that happen. I think everybody tuning in today knows Matthew Upchurch, Chairman and Managing Director of Virtuoso. We're delighted, Matthew, to have you with us. Thanks very much for coming. We're also thrilled to have Thomas Cox with us. Thomas is the Managing Director of the Corinthia Hotel in London. He's been there for nearly 5 years, Thomas, right? And
yeah, absolutely.
Before that, you managed Claridge's in London, you managed the Café Royal. You're absolute great spokesman for London. So we're just thrilled that you're able to be with us to reflect as well on this great weekend we've had in London. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
I thought that it'd be interesting to really think back a little bit about what's been happening in the last 18 months since the travel industry virtually came to a close and then slowly started to open up again. And we saw the affluent consumers beginning to travel. Okay, domestic, Caribbean, Mexico, and then Europe began to open up, and eventually the UK opened up as well. But now we seem to be at a new stage of the pandemic. And I just thought we might reflect on where we are now and where we're going to be in the coming months. Matthew, where do you see us going next?
Well, I think, obviously, one of the things that was very encouraging as we started this year is, the pent-up demand is absolutely real. We know we talked about it in the first half of the year, obviously before the Delta variant situation. The forward bookings for travel a year plus were literally, numbers we've never seen. And by the way, numbers that we were comparing to 2019, because of course nobody compares their numbers to 2020. But we're talking about numbers in the 50s, 60s, 108% ahead. It was unbelievable. Now, that has tapered off a little bit with the Delta variant. But what's interesting is that we're still 26% ahead. Now, when the UK being one of the absolute most important, destination, and of course, London being the hub of it all, when the UK opened up on August 2nd, our hotel bookings jumped by 102%. Now, from from a low base, but still that showed it. And then the other statistic I was just saying is that October is already pacing 34% ahead of September, and our UK air bookings for September are already 24% ahead of August. So there's this very interesting situation that's happening with the affluent consumer, where they're focusing on the long-term piece, and then they're being opportunistic, on the short term. And I think that's something that's very powerful about having had this weekend and this event, of leading by example, and our London hotels and the whole community coming together, because we're leading by example, we're showing what's open. And I think that as all the things that we talked about this week about consistency of policy, common sense, the UK has done a good job, and we're all focusing on how we can keep doing better, because I actually am much more bullish on the ability to influence, particularly with the affluent, highly educated customer, the ability to move shorter term business than ever before.
And you've been using a phrase, pandemic to endemic. What's that about?
Well, more and more, if you think about it, there's, if you look at the idea of complete eradication, that's becoming a little more difficult. More and more health experts around the world are basically talking about from pandemic to endemic, meaning that there's not going to be eradication, that endemic is just a fancy word saying that we're going to learn to live with it to some form or another. And I think you look at some of the psychology around that. And if there's one thing that human beings are very powerful, it's the only reason we exist as a species, is adaptability. And I think that, again, those are the things. So endemic just means that I think that more government policies, more of the psychological, emotive aspect of the traveler, about the idea about how do I live with this? How do I manage? How do I don't stop my life 100%? If you notice, nobody's, very few places around the world are really talking about, effective lockdowns anymore. We are talking about vaccination status and things like that. But that's one of the things that's important. So I think that's what we're seeing. And I'm actually, it's been a couple, the last month was a little bit tougher because of just the things, but again, that's coming back to fruition. And I think what we did this week in London was absolutely crucial. And I just want to thank again all of our London partners, and everybody, because this was leading by example and showing what we can do.
Fantastic. So, Thomas, one issue I'm still hearing about is service delivery. Not necessarily anything to do with this weekend at all. It was absolutely fabulous. But we are hearing this buzz in the industry still. There are concerns about the levels of consistency and the luxury experience. How do we give advisors and their clients the confidence to know that they won't be disappointed when they continue to book the UK?
Well, I hope that the relationships that have been built over the years have created an environment of trust and knowing each other, that we can be absolutely assured of our dedication to quality and our commitment to customer service. The weekend was amazing, but it wasn't that there was a show put on which came to an abrupt end when our friends departed and the picture changed. I mean, what we have experienced together this weekend and what we've been through, this is exactly what the customers will experience as well. And I'm obviously also speaking on behalf of all my colleagues in town here, and I know that we as hoteliers, to ask customer service is one of the highest priorities. So, and we've also faced challenging situations before. Are we inundated with people applying to work in our hotels right now? No. And I think it would be wrong for me to say that there is absolutely no issue with staff, because there is. But we will resolve it, and we're dealing with it. We will only commit to business that we can service to the level that the advisors and the customers quite rightly expect. And then moving forward, we need to have a conversation here in the UK, and we need to reach out to government, and we need to look at existing immigration laws, and we need to act very, very quickly. However, all of this is post-pandemic, and it was a very, very unusual situation that none of us has experienced before. And, I think this word uncertainty will slowly, hopefully leave our lives again. I mean, we will get more certainty about how the business builds up, what the demand is like. So our planning will only get better and better. But I think I would really like to assure absolutely everyone that the experience that the guests and visitors will have here in London will be a fantastic one, just like our guests had last weekend.
Yeah, and it's not just the hotels, is it? I mean, the taxi drivers, the theatres, everybody's involved in this.
Exactly. And I really don't want to deny it that it's there, because we can read it in the press, and it's in retail, it's in construction, it's the lorry drivers, and yes, it's hospitality staff as well. But I feel we need to deal with it responsibly, and at the heart of all of this is, of course, is the customer experience and is our customer.
Yeah. And, Peter, I'd like to build, I think what you just said, Thomas, is so powerful. But, I remember years ago, one of the things we used to talk about and train a lot in the travel advisory business is don't sell out of your own pocketbook. Meaning, if I'm a travel advisor, somebody's spending $150,000 in something, it's like, you got to get used to that, right? All of us in hospitality, particularly in the affluent sector. One of the things we've also been saying is don't sell out of your own perception of risk or your own perception of service levels, because there are a lot of people out there that the early adopters, they want to come back to London. They love London. And frankly, if you say this is what to expect, that's all I need to know. Because don't make the assumption, there are so many people at the consumer level, the traveler level, that have a very, very, very deep rooting. I, for one, have spent so much of my life, I can think of so many moments in my life where London is at the heart of it, right? As a child, all the different things, experiences I've had. So I think that's the other thing that's important is we as an industry have got to realize that when we get across the right information, there are a lot of people out there that are actually willing to they don't want it. They know everything isn't perfect,
right.
But if we're just upfront with them and they want to be part of the solution.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. No surprises.
Yeah.
Only pleasant ones.
That's true. But you're right. London has always been a favorite. And we just did some research with the Affluent Consumer Research Group in Washington, which just came out last week. Travel to Europe is in demand over the next 18 months. There's no doubt about that. And they're predicting 35% increase in the affluent traveling to Europe. So that's really good news. England's going to receive the bulk, apparently, of those visitors, according to the research. And 33% of the European businesses are headed in the direction of the UK. So even with COVID withstanding, it looks like starting the spring next year, it could be pretty good news for the travel advisor to send business to the UK. And the UK visitors are keen to experience, we know, fine hotels and resorts. And the probability is that of the research we did, that about 88% of them want to stay in luxury properties. So, Thomas, how are you seeing bookings, the last quarter of this year, beginning of next year? Are you beginning to see a little bit of a swell?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I have to say, I want to be really quietly very optimistic because everything that we have offered the market has been picked up, and everything that we seem to put out there, customers really want, and they want to consume it. And I do remember the day when the announcement were made that the US guests can come back. And from that day, you could gradually see every day, day by day, bookings coming onto the books. It's not yet 100% back to pre-pandemic levels, but of course not. It would be naive to think that it is. But if things stay good, and that's the way it looks right now, how we prepare with vaccination rollouts and how the booster program has been communicated last week, I am very optimistic for travel from the US, and that's on a leisure side and also on the corporate side, because the corporate side we can see picking up as well. And it might not quite be the pent up demand that we see on the leisure side, but I'm optimistic, and I do feel like, speaking to all my colleagues, that is a trend that you can see throughout all London hotels.
That's great. I'm particularly pleased to hear about the corporate side, because we're getting mixed messages on that. I think some people are not traveling, but I think more entrepreneurial people have got to be out there seeing people now.
Yeah, we can see it start again. The inquiries are out there, and we can see first movements, and very prominent industry figures are basically doing what we did last weekend, and they're showing that this is what the world should be doing, and that it's absolutely fine, and they reassure people that it's safe to travel and that it's a great thing to do.
And Peter, my only commentary, obviously our focus is leisure, but we have some very powerful corporate agencies, and the only thing that I'll add to that is, I think this whole interesting debate about, and all those grandiose, the death of business travel. I think it's kind of like it's kind of like what happened with, streaming and theaters and all this. I think that the relationship building side of corporate travel is going to be stronger than ever. Yeah. We've had Virtuoso members tell us that small groups, small incentives, whatever relationship building type stuff, we're actually being taught that this is great, but it's even better if you already have a person-to-person relationship. Right. So I think we're going to see that evolve, and I think there may be some of the corporate travel that does get reduced, but I think some of the other corporate travel around relationship building, customer acquisition, team building, things like that is going to be even stronger.
Yeah, and for your advisors throughout North America, how do we give them even more confidence? What do we need to do as an industry to demonstrate to them the confidence of travel?
Well, I think look, if you talk to any of our advisors, the number one thing that we, obviously we had, Julia Simpson, the new CEO of WTTC. The one thing that we keep asking governments around the world is, please be as streamlined, as clear, as accessible, and give us some time. We can live with pretty much anything. Just don't spring it on us, and try to do everything you can to make sure that we can rely on information. And so I think it's those are the key things that we're working on. And it's a constant. It's a constant battle. I mean, I still, frankly, do not understand how the United States cannot receive vaccinated travelers from the UK and Europe, whatever. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But I think those are the things. But I will say that as far as confidence, that brings me back to the role of an advisor, right? And I think one of the things that advisors always have to think about is our job is to help people understand the options, right?
Right.
And it's informed consent. And that's why I keep coming back to this. You don't sell out of your own pocketbook. You don't sell out of your own risk factors. And you help clarify that and then be available to help people maneuver those things the best they can. But we know for a fact, right? The flip side of all this is travel advisors have never been in more demand than they are now.
Right. Yeah.
And I think the other confidence is what Thomas said earlier. This is where decades of relationship building come into play.
That's right. But I did see one statistic from the report we released last week that before the pandemic, about 40% of those affluent were using a travel agent. That's jumped to 60%.
Yeah.
They all need help. They all need advice. They need to be their handheld to navigate. As you say.
What's funny about that, though, is one of our other narratives is we're also advising travel advisors today, though, to be pickier about who they're going to deal with.
Right.
So just because there's a 50% increase doesn't mean that they're going to take them all.
That's a good one. I like that. So we've seen a lot of investment in London. I mean, we just saw there's some amazing buildings being converted into new hotels. We know about the new Crossrail being built in London. I know it's been an ongoing saga for the Londoners, but it looks like that's going to make it a lot easier to get around London. Thomas, it's a vibrant city again, isn't it? I mean, a lot's happening. There's a lot of investment going on.
100%. I mean, there's this famous quote, if you get tired of London, you're tired of life. And I think London doesn't allow you to. But you're absolutely right. I think there is a lot of investment going into the city to keep the city convenient and easy to travel. In our own world, I mean, all the exciting new hotels that are opening from Raffles to Peninsula to Rosewood, etc., I'm sure I've forgotten many. I think we'll keep the destination exciting for travelers, and it's the existing hotels are welcoming those with open arms. But just also when you live here or when you're there, I mean, we've all seen last weekend that life is becoming more and more normal again. I mean, the art world is doing exciting things. The fairs are starting again. The museums are open. New shows. There was a show called Eye of the Collector started last week. So there are constantly new options. If you look at the investment in retail, what's happening on the experiential shopping side of things, I think they're very keen to keep London at the forefront of things. I mean, this new Burberry store on Sloane Street, at the end of Sloane Street there, I think will be spectacular. Culinary, the restaurants, large and small. I mean, if you venture out into the various boroughs here in London, you find some of the most interesting restaurants, but even the larger brands, Nusret and Bar de Pré, they're opening in London. So it will just never stop to be exciting. The events we see picking up, from sporting to music, what's missing? And we are here.
We're open. That's great. No, I think
it's a good feeling. I mean, yes. If you live in one of these metropoles in the world, and if you've seen it so quiet, and to see it really waking up again and returning to normality, and people using the city normally again. I think, it's just a wonderful thing to experience.
It's really impressive to see how much investment's going on. It's fantastic. So, Matthew, what now? What's next? Where do we go from here? How do we keep this momentum going?
Well, first of all, one of the things that we keep talking about this is definitely one of the things that I said to all my friends, whether on the advisor side or our partner side, is it's a slog and it's ups and downs. So self-care, working with each other, these are the things. That's what was so energizing about this time in London, right? I mean, we hear this time and time again. So I think that we need to do that. I also think that the way in which advisors are working with the partners, there's always been this creative tension with affluent travelers between going to new places and going back to the places that define me, right? Like London. And I think one of the most important things that we do for destinations like London is we do talk about those things, Thomas, that you were talking about. We do talk about what's different, what's new, et cetera. And I do think that one of the positives that's happened is we're seeing a lot of destinations learning how to become even better experiential luxury destinations, right? Through more collaboration with not only amongst quote unquote competitors, but with the destination itself. We're always telling government officials, people, whatever, is, do create something that allows for the ability of the affluent traveler to have access to things, right? Conveniences. And, in some cases, it's a political issue because there are populists, they'll say, why should wealthy people have special access, blah, 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 et cetera. But I always come back and say, it's a luxury product. We create a middle class by creating a great product like, you build a BMW or you build a Land Rover, et cetera, that creates great jobs. And so I think that's one of the things that we have been really focusing on for a long time. I think the pandemic has opened up a lot of discussions about how do we make it better. And I think that's what you were saying, Thomas, is that the reality is, as traumatizing as this been, I think that one of the things that's been good about it is it has been a turbocharger to creativity, right? And it has been a turbocharger to cross collaboration. And I think that's something we need to keep focusing on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Agree.
So Thomas, final word to you. You've got an amazing hotel there. You're up and running, and look at your background there. It all looks fantastic. What would you like to leave our listeners with?
Let's allow for travel and for hospitality to happen again. Life is throwing a lot of things at us, and together we're all very, very strong. And I think, let's never stop dreaming and live life and never forget what wonderful experiences you make when you travel, and how we in our sector, in the travel sector or on the hotel side, can really contribute to enrich people's life. Sometimes you need to let the past be the past, and you need to look forward. And I really feel that now we need to look forward, and we have a great opportunity also to make things better. Sometimes when a line is drawn in the sand, you had time to reflect and to review. And I can only hope that, and I don't want to sound too philosophical, but I can only hope that we come back to a better world after this.
This is fantastic. Well, this has been really super. It's been a great weekend, great celebration of London being open, and this is a great way to finish it off. So thank you both very much indeed for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Peter. And thank you to all our advisors and our partners for leading by example. And thank you, Peter, for all you and Nick and everybody else, what you all did this week.
Thank you very much. So this is Peter Bates from Insider Travel Report.